Hey, we're back with the one and only Ring of the Elderly. That's right, we stole the bling off a dementia patient in a nursing home, and now we're going to answer the question that no one has ever asked or wanted answered. Can you beat Elden Ring using only the Cleanrot spear? Now, what is the Cleanrot spear? What purpose does it serve? Is the little shield thingy on the spear important? Not at all, but we're going to use only the Ash of War to beat the game with, because I felt like it. Now, what exactly does the spear do, or what's so special about it? Nothing really. The Ash of War is just unique, and I think that's pretty snazzy. The Ash of War in question does a little ballerina sweep across my grandma's grave, and then her golden fingers poke out afterwards. Since I spread growth formula on my spear before I do it, it's able to reanimate the dead with ease. It's also called Sacred Phallus, so you just know it's gonna bust. So we gotta do the most exciting and unthinkable thing that only a madman would attempt. Something that most people have never done in their entire life. We have to spread positivity in a game of Overwatch. We have to obtain the weapon actually, and pack it up because this one's a doozy. Now how exactly do we get the weapon? Well, I'm glad I assumed you asked, and without hearing your opposition or opinion, I'm just gonna tell you. The weapon is a random drop from Cleanrot Knights, which are located in various areas. However, since we just started, we can only really get it from the ones in Asperger's Swamp. Now, according to the wiki, the drop rate is a massive 1% at 100 discovery, so like a nun after church would say, let's get the shit gamers. Now, as for the route that we use to get the spear, I have a pretty good route made out right now. Typically I just go around and kill these little knight guys, but every once in a while, my tippy toe steps across the borderline, and Millicent decides she's had enough of my tomfoolery, and just absolutely comes and puts the whoop on me. So I have to make sure I don't cross over the line, otherwise I get swirled into the swamp juices by Millicent, and that doesn't make me feel good at all. Alright, we finally got the spear, so now we can start the run and stop dilly-dallying around. Of course, we get some little stones to upgrade it here and there, just a little bit though, because no one likes a naked spear unless they're paying. We gotta put a little pizzazz on it, but just a little, because too much means I have a small willy or something, and sometimes the truth hurts. Now, by a little, I accidentally may have gotten carried away and got it to +6. But hey, I didn't beat a single boss or enemy to do so, so technically it's fair game, and I don't want to hear any complaining like some hoes.
Your speakers down, pussy nigga. Y'all stop complaining like some hoes. Fuck wrong with y'all?
Otherwise, I'm ransacking your entire village and replacing all of your favorite collector items with pictures of myself doing the stanky leg with the sepia filter over them. Think carefully if you want to complain now, because there's some pretty high stakes. But disregarding all that, we finally got everything we need so we can go put the whoop on Margaret, and when I tell you he was begging for mercy, I'm actually lying to you, because you can clearly see in the background of my previous will to live is sitting right on the ground, and I will not be making the mistake of picking it up again. As long as I get near his tail, I'm able to ride it like a witch's broom until he swings it around and I get motion sickness, allowing me to do some damage. The extra damage from the yellow spears out of the ground are a nice touch, but he never consented, so technically it's a bad touch. The fight is very basic and long. As long as I don't run out of FP, even though I can still use the skill, I just won't have the extra spears for damage. But the more the better, so I make sure to keep it filled. Eventually I beat him using the grandma fingers, and that makes him feel oh so dumb because he just lost to NPCs. Now, Godfrey was just as simple as Margaret. I just rolled right into his clothes and wore them for myself, all the while slashing him up with my spear and impaling him with the magic afterwards. Essentially, I'm just metaphorically and realistically slashing prices because after I kill him, I can sell his soul to the devil and gain massive profits from the transaction in order to get more levels. There's not much to say other than he got beat by NPC spears as well, which is equally as pathetic as Margaret, and as long as I stay close to him, he gets super shy and nervous, so I can easily take control of his life. Red Wolf was simple and ended really fast, but guess what? There's a very special thing you need to realize. We're 3 for 3 on NPC spear wins, which by the way, is called a turkey if you didn't know. And after that, Renala was a little more troublesome than the other 3, because after almost every attack I would do, she would air glide away from me. This means my little spear buddies were unable to really do much, because as if she just saw Jehovah's Witness, she does what every person with a brain would do. She runs into another country so they don't ever visit her again. She's taking after the wise words of John Madden, who famously said the road to Easy Street goes through the sewer, and so she moves to Idaho. But basically, I just try to get up in her face and hit her, but she constantly cancels my attack with her own because she's much faster than me. Her hands were made for spinning and throwing her staff around, while mine were made for simply grave robbing. The fight lasts for way longer than it should because she just keeps attacking first and stopping me from attacking back, and I never learn my lesson. It's quite pathetic honestly, but eventually I managed to get the final hit on her and get a parting kiss with her dragon right after, so it's a double win. Before we get into Radon, I decided to go get some talismans that probably won't help me at all for later in the run, but I'm still gonna get them. The Spirit Self scales with Strength and Dexterity, while the extra glowing spears after the fact scale with Faith. Now, realistically, I don't care about the Faith aspect, because I don't want religion in my video game, but mostly because it hardly does anything and it misses half the time anyways. So I decided to go get the +5 heirlooms for Strength and Dexterity, just for a little more damage. And I know what you're thinking, +5 isn't really a lot, but if I had +5 in my life, it would make one hell of a difference. Now, the first one we decide to get is the Courage the Cowardly Dog heirloom, which increases our strength. It's located in the fort, only been visited once since the game's release, also known as Fort Gale. I mean, there's a tiger thing here, and a teleporter that I've never used in my life, because, like my sexuality, I don't understand it and it frightens me. But we finally get the talisman and then we can move on to the next one. Next up, we get the Handicapped Heirloom, which will increase our dexterity. In order to do this, we have to cure cancer and listen to an old man talk about his childhood, or daughter, or maybe the fact that he has a fucking hellhound from Black Ops sitting right outside of his house for no reason. Once we get past the dog round, and once we get both the talismans, we can move on to the next bosses, since we now do a whole 1 more damage than before with our max ammo. Why does Radon look like Wizpig from Diddy Kong Racing? I'm losing my mind over the trauma that cheating ass fat pig caused me as a kid. How exactly does he make such sharp turns on a rocket? It truly confuses me to this day and makes me question reality. The fight with Radon is essentially like playing patty cake. We just sit next to him because we need time to get the Ash of War out, and as long as he doesn't use his Bakugan spin attack too many times, we can consistently slice his horse open. Every once in a while though, I get slammed into the sand and reminded of my childhood, but that's okay, because I watch counseling videos and roleplay as if I'm the one in the room with them, so I'll be fine. I think. Godfrey looks at my spear and laughs because he goes to church every Sunday, therefore making him resistant to holy damage from the spear. However, even though he has the protection of the Holy Spirit imbued on him, like every other churchgoer, a bladed stick piercing their body will usually stop them. Emphasis on usually though, because if they're hopped up on the old Holy Lord's crack pipe, then that may prove troublesome, but I doubt Godfrey would do that kind of thing. But seeing as how he's kicking my ass, I may have misjudged him a little too early. After we murder Godfrey, we unlock our final talisman slot, so I need to go get 2 more in order to fill them all up. And I've decided, using the power of my 5 IQ points, to get the Carl Sagan crest. The crest lowers FP consumption by 25%, and with this big brain decision I've made, the FP cost for my skill will go from a massive 12 to a very small and cheap cost of 9. That's a whole 3 less FP, which means absolutely nothing for me in the grand scheme of things, but it's lower than 12, so I'll take it. As for the other talismans, I went to go get the bullshit talisman, which will raise my poise by 33%, and this will be great for reducing the amount of times my attack gets cancelled by an enemy attack. Hold on, wait. Actually, the wiki says it reduces my poise damage taken by 25%. I don't really know what's going on, but apparently the wiki says this makes a big difference, so I suppose it's a big deal or something. Hopefully I stop being a little bitch and getting interrupted so much anyway. Spoiler alert though, it doesn't work, I'm still a bitch. Anyway, it's located in the back of Dragon Barrow Cave, so I guess I'm going into this cave now, and jumping through a bunch of bullshit to get there. Now, I finally have a full set of talismans. I'm ready for anything that will stand in my way. Speaking of standing in my way though, Margaret's fat ass is up next on the chopping block. For the Margaret fight, I essentially have to be lottery lucky that he disables his brain so I can actually hit him. Mostly because even though I have the Bull Goat talisman, which would normally help me hyper armor an attack before being staggered, it doesn't. So that entire last segment where I went and got it was a complete waste. Simply, it doesn't help me because my fit right now is hot garbage and makes no difference on my possum stat. So I'm constantly getting rock'em sock'em roboted by this diarrhea dumper. Once we hit second phase, I have to constantly move around, otherwise his bowel problem becomes my problem, and unless I'm on a hidden camera show, I will never help others in need. As a result of this, Margaret unfortunately is going to have to deal with his problem all on his own, all the while I beat the shit out of him, literally, over and over again. If he can't handle this point in his life, then he'll never be able to handle the mean streets of Lindale. Anyways, Margaret's dead, and we aren't, so let's move out. In order to beat Loretta, I have to get behind her horse and groom its tail, otherwise, Loretta tells me I have a severe case of lazybones-itis. If you don't already know, that would be a very bad thing. You never want to be a lazybones, otherwise the cart narcs will get you. There's not much of the fight, and honestly, you probably shouldn't see it, since I'm all up in the horse's behind for most of the fight, and let's be honest, only a select few people would want to see that, so it's a good thing I have the footage and you don't. Astel is pretty silly. because half the time in my runs I forget he even exists, so I only fight him sometimes, and other times I completely forget about him and never fight him. It's probably for the better that I don't fight him, because he's long and slithery, which makes me feel uncomfortable since at any moment he could slip his way into any open orifice, and seeing as how it's not Thursday, I am not in the mood for that right now. As long as he doesn't wrap his lovely pincers around me, there's not much to be afraid of, because half of his attacks miss, and the other half take 10 years to come out, so I have plenty of time to prepare. Even though I say that, I still end the fight at low health and with no healing, because sometimes I'm just in a silly and goofy mood. The spear works great for Fire Giant because the spears after the attack usually always hit him because of his name. I'll let you guess which part of his name attributes to the fact, and I'll give you a hint. It's not the reason you think. It's actually because of the fire in his name, because fire attracts holy spears from the ground, and that's on my man Robert Francis Winch. I just have to make sure that he doesn't lay on top of me, because I would realistically be killed instantly, but since it's a video game, I would simply be out of breath. The second phase takes way longer than the first, because he moves his hands away too fast before I can kiss them, so I'm left using his thighs instead. He also decides to roll off a 1-foot drop and completely overreact for no reason, as if he just fell off a 10-story building, not just once, but multiple times. And I finish the fight by chopping his loincloth in half, which in turn probably means some other things got chopped, but that's too graphic. For the double clan members, I begin to panic, because typically I can handle one clan member, but I cross the line at 2. As the old saying goes, one's a party and two's a crowd, so therefore I need to remove them both. But in super serious mode, this fight was 8, and I have what I would like to call the Godskin Duo experience. After many attempts, I managed to actually get the win against these guys, which took about 10 years off my lifespan, so at this point I could go at just about any moment according to my calculations. The main problem with these guys was the fact that once I was about to hit one of them, the other one would snowball fight me out of nowhere, except they were the kids that put rocks in the snowballs like a bunch of cucks. As long as I could break the line of sight with one of them, I was able to focus on the other without being interrupted too much. Once I beat the big one, I completely ignored the other one and played Tom and Jerry with him because I just couldn't be asked to deal with him. It's amazing to me how much I only fight the bigger one during this fight, because it seems like I never even touched the other one ever since I found out he has a massive amount of STDs. But eventually we beat the fat one, and only the fat one, which causes the poster board one to die of heartbreak from losing his partner over and over again. So now I'm exploring the lava mountain for absolutely no reason, and all of a sudden I hear a voice. Oh my goodness. I can't believe there's somebody actually up here with me. I thought I was the only one on this mountain. I have absolutely no idea that another person would show up here. It seems like he's stuck and suffering in the lava, and would you look at that? He gave me a jar head as his final gift before burning alive. What a kind and thoughtful pot man. Well, now I have a pot in my head. Anyway, Tyrannotrum is here, and honestly it wasn't too bad dealing with his period blasts. As long as I didn't become feral for it and attack when I saw him doing it, I was pretty fine. I just had to bide my time for an opening, and that was about it. He did, however, keep launch coding and dragging me every time he turned to look at me, which was pretty annoying. But since he's such a big Pokemon and doesn't really move much, I can usually pump him full of syringes from the ground, which infects him at an alarming rate. It seems to me like somebody should have gotten their booster shot. Somehow I managed to actually dodge his yellow breath attack for the first time in world history, which I truly believe is worthy of celebration. Now, Mr. Beast, if he was religious, is a typical sweatlord. He tries to shank me like it's the mean streets of Britain. However, I've played Wolfenstein, so I know how to counter him. As long as I waited for him to shove his knife into the ground and scrape it across, I could usually get a hit on him and eventually make him give up his Mr. Beast cosplay and turn into the Black Blade, even though most of the time it's red, so it's pretty obvious to me that he's just trying to clickbait me. During this phase, I took advantage of his athletic body and exploited him in talent shows as my protege, but in reality, he learned it all from YouTube. Every time he did his over-the-top Naruto spin attack, or his very lackluster basic slam attack, I could easily roll past him, say "Omae wa mo shinderu," and then cut him all the while he screams "Nani?" I literally just waited for one of those attacks for the whole fight, and he did them quite a bit, which in the end ended up tiring him out and sending him into cardiac arrest. This poor man named Gideon said that he knew I would come. However, what he didn't expect is that I'd come again, because he thinks he's in a turn-based RPG because every time I hit him with the initial attack, he thinks it's his turn and attacks back, but gets caught in the yellow piss attack and then cries. What he fails to realize is that I never play fair under any circumstances. This causes him to retaliate in anger at the fact that he's getting clowned on, and he proceeds to beat my ass, which my response is to push him down the stairs and make it look natural, even though he has massive stab wounds all over his body. This giant snake thinks fire will stop me, but I'm already a crazed madman with a thirst for blood, so he's mistaken. I hop right into the fire while wearing a metal pot on my head, so that any intelligence or pain receptors I may have will boil away. I just sit in the fire the entire fight and keep doing the same thing over and over again, and no matter how long I do it, he just can't seem to understand how to stop it, which is just a-okay for me. The first Godfrey, Lord of Elden, understands one thing and one thing only. He knows how to stomp the ground extremely well, which just rocks my whole world. Other than stomping the ground, he doesn't do much else, which allows me to keep chopping his knees until he just can't take it anymore. After I chop his legs a little, he gets hot and bothered, makes him take off his shirt and kills a spiritual tiger just to show how metal he is. Normally this would intimidate anyone who saw it, but because I already boiled my brains in the God Serpent fight, I have no common sense any longer. That and the fact that when you dodge into his hands, somehow he doesn't grab you, even though you basically present yourself to him by curling up into a ball. But I guess this is why he never played any sports, because he cannot hold onto a ball to save his life. Eventually though, we sit on the ground and act like we're hurt, which makes him wind up his helping hand to help us up, but we planted a bomb at his feet and we're just buying time until it triggered. Moog may be the Lord of Blood, but he should be the Lord of Dark Souls 2 hitboxes, because truly, what is this? As long as he doesn't rob me of hitboxes out of nowhere, like my ex-wife Monica, I've gotten pretty good at just dodging his attacks and knowing when to hit him. Of course, as everyone knows, in order to enter Moog's palace, you have to conduct a blood ritual with some guy in a white mask, so results may vary. I usually just sit next to him, and that eventually leads to him cornering me in an alleyway, whispering the Pledge of Allegiance to me, and then discombobulating me while he comes tumbling down from a bird nest. Luckily I dodge it though, and I whisper back the Canadian national anthem, and like a true American, he instantly dies from the lack of patriotism. This silly little goober has no idea what she's in for, because when I pulled up with the pointed stick, she started to kick my ass. Mostly because whenever I attack, I'm stuck in an animation that does nothing when it hits her, so instead, like a white van with a man inside, I have to set a trap for her. I essentially have to attack early so that she walks into the van, hoping that she'll get candy, but instead she gets something much worse. This ultimately means I have to be extremely careful when I decide to attack and study her like a book, so I don't get tricked by her waterfowl dance when I least expect it. Eventually though, I lure her into the van and she does the unthinkable. She takes off her clothes and reveals that she was an undercover Fed all along. So now I have to play defensively so I don't make the mistake of incriminating myself, because all it takes is one slip up before she arrests me. Throughout the fight, she slowly jogs towards me, just waiting for me to slip up, but I know better from my previous encounters with the FBI. Honestly, a lot of the fight is just hoping and guessing that she won't follow up with a quick attack, but rather one that makes her take 8 years, which typically means I can only guarantee an attack after her blooming flower from Walmart attack, which she ends up doing quite a bit. For the icon of peak physique, I mostly just wait for him to slam his hammer into the ground, which will knock the wind out of him for a brief period, upon which I can, how you say, lay the hurt on the fool. Since he resists holy damage quite a bit, the grandma hands don't do much, but they do tickle his thighs just a little bit, which is quite nice for him. Of course though, I have this pot in my head, so I'm able to take quite a beating from him without too much downside, other than the loud ringing in my ears, but that's better than the voices I'm used to hearing. Ultimately though, the fight isn't too bad. There's not really much I can do about the damage I take, unless I waited for him to do the exact same attack every single time, and let's be honest, nobody really wants to or has the time to wait that long. I have much more important things to do. The big head honcho himself, the well that dives into water that we somehow walk on, is finally here. And if the fact that I, like Jesus, can walk on water doesn't scare him even a little, then I don't know what will. But basically, no matter where Elden Beast is during the fight, you can see his next attack coming before he even does it. He's extremely predictable, however I am completely unhinged, so you never know what I'm going to do, which results in me getting enveloped by his yellow lights like a moth to a flame. However, this flame has a long pointy spear, and finally we skewer the Elden Beast and move on from the torture of Elden Ring. So yeah, anyways.